There we go. Sorry about that. So again, let me put these back in the chat for us just to see where we are. So we're on our chapter 7, and we can use these two files I'll put into chat as an example code. And all I want to do now is try to figure out how do I go ahead and style my image to be around a certain section there, right? So if I go ahead and let's try to style our H2 element here, what I can say here, similar to what we've always been doing, is if I go ahead and say H2 at the center, like so, I'm going to text align my H2 at the center. I'll get a really nice centering of this guy. But now we'll have this issue where I want to put my one image on the left side and the other image on the right side. So you might be tempted to do something like this. You'll say image, and then let's go ahead and let's change the width, say like to 150 pixels. And the height, 150 pixels here. So we'll notice that they're a bit smaller. So we do this one is 200. Okay. So it looks like we're getting somewhere a little bit here, but now an issue arises that I don't have the ability. Let's just say I want to float this guy one to the left and one to the right. I'm going to use this property called float, which is just going to tell us to float, put it on the left or put on the right. Some of us have already seen float with the Project 2 before, but we'll see here, I get this issue where I have this overlapping image. So these guys are technically floating on the left side of this div here. If I go ahead and say float right, we'll notice that they're both on the right side, and that's not what I want. I want one on the left and one on the right. So how do I actually, and again, this with practice, you'll kind of encounter solutions you might figure out. But for this scenario, if I want to go ahead and put one on the left and one on the right, I can do something with either IDs or classes to achieve that functionality. So what I could say here is for my ID, I'm going to call my one ID as left image, and I'll call my other ID as right image. And now again with IDs, the difference is I need to use my pound sign to reference them. So I could say something where I say left image. And what if I do a float of left? And let me actually remove this guy from up there. I'm going to go ahead and say for my right image, float to the right. And we'll notice now that I'm kind of getting them left and right. We'll see this looks a little wonky though. It's kind of like one's pushed over to the edge. Let me go ahead and just try to refix this to be the same size. We'll notice that my spacing's all off. And the reason that is happening is that what we could do here, if you're encountering this scenario where it doesn't look formatted properly, what you could do with images, because they're void and we can work with them a bit differently, is if I want the text that I'm working with to be H2, I could go ahead and surround my images and my text with the H2 side. Okay. So I'll wind up with something a bit like this. And we'll see here that now I'm actually getting this type of format that is has my text in the middle and my two images on either side. Okay. And again, the way that I'm doing this, and just to showcase the difference again, is that even though we usually think if I put up my start tag of H2, my end tag, everything inside of it has to be text. But because these guys are void elements, then we're used to void being kind of a bit unique. Another void element that we've seen a lot is BR, that break line. We'll be able to put that into anywhere that we'd like it to go. So I can actually surround this guy with two break lines as well. It makes it a bit weird though, so I'll just remove it. But again, if you're trying to keep everything into the one area, this is one approach that we could do. Okay. So this is kind of working with this floating. And again, you can actually use positioning a bit more with it as well. If I go to margin right, let me say 50 pixels on margin right. If you see there, let me change this back to 0 pixels. What happens is that they're kind of all lined immediately into the format, but I'll say, you know what, go ahead and put 50 pixel margin to the right of my left image. So it's this section right here where my cursor is. And if I refresh it, we'll see that the text kind of gets pushed over. And again, this is a bit redundant, but I can do the inverse on the other side. Margin left of 50 pixels. And again, that will just kind of put it back into the same spot. But we could see here that we can really fiddle around with these images and get positioning working okay. Okay. Cool. So that's just a little bit about floating. But floating is a nice way to get information like this. So you could float images to the left of some pieces of text or to the right as well. And again, we'll see here, if I'm actually looking at the code, you'll see that in the paragraph tag, all the images are immediately inside of there. So when you want to position images around pieces of text and make it look nice around text, you're going to want to put the image void, or excuse me, the image thing directly into the header of the paragraph. And as another example of this, let me go ahead and make a paragraph here. See here. So now it looks like my body is kind of being in the center here. But if I want to go ahead and put another image, let me copy this twice. Let me put the same image one more time. This might look a little wonky when I do it, but you'll see here, I'll need to fix up the padding and everything, but the main idea is that I'm putting the image directly by the text there. Cool. We could actually go ahead and kind of reference the paragraph tag as well from here. But we could see that it's a nice way to go ahead and make sure that everything is stylized okay. So if you want to get this type of effect, you could do something similar where you put the images inside the text. Okay. Cool. If you'd like, let me do... kind of do a quick fix here for us. Let me put this text into my, oops, some more focus there. And then I'll change this guy to be this guy here. And there's some more information with these images. I'll put this in the chat so that folks can download it. But I'll kind of explain what's going on here. So let me put this updated version in the chat. Cool. Let me, sorry everyone. So now if I go ahead, we'll see my image is a bit larger than it's, let me go ahead and delete this right here. Go. So now we'll see that based on the parameters that I gave my image here, I have the image that's there, that's smaller, and I can actually put it onto the section here that has a width and a height of 15. Okay, so if I go ahead and I do this inline styling of width of 15 and height of 15, I'm able to go ahead and really reduce the size that I'm working with. So their images that they used here with the peach trees and the palm trees, they have a native different size than the cake image, so it's going to look a bit different. But again, this text can make it fit in for us. Let's go ahead and just reference the original one, though, as it's a bit neater looking for our purposes here. Oops. Cool. All right. So we got to focus a bit on that there. Is everyone understanding this floating position? We messed around a bit with it, but this makes sense to folks. Straightforward enough. You'll float specific ID to the left or right. Hey, Solvent. How are you?
Hi. How's it going?
Good.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. We're on chapter 7 right now. So what we're doing is we're just fiddling around with
Oh, it just
images.
started. Great.
Yeah, we
I
just
was.
started up there.
It seemed very far already.
Oh, sure, no worries. I'll put the HTML and the image into the chat for you to download. And then
Okay.
go from there. Cool.
Let's see this.
Nice. One more thing that we can kind of look at with floating. Let's just see if I go ahead and if I go ahead and make a div down here, and let me go ahead and make 2 different divs a part of this one. So what I'm doing here is I'm going ahead and I made 2 different divisions. Let me move this for the time being. What we could try to do here as well is with these IDs of left div and right div. Let's see if the same concept kind of applies from images over to divs, because sometimes they apply and sometimes it doesn't apply. So what we could say here is let me...
Why do we need the pound symbol again? Sorry. I must
great.
have...
So what I'm doing here is because I'm using IDs, the way that I can reference an ID with my style sheet is the pound sign. If I was doing something like this, class is equal to left div, class is equal to right div, I wouldn't use a pound sign, I'd use a dot because that's the different style. So whenever we use pound signs, that says that we have an ID by the name of left image or an ID by the name of right image. If we use a dot, then that says that we have a class by that specific name. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
What if I want to refer on a link to a paragraph inside a div?
Refer to a specific paragraph in a div?
The paragraph, there's only one paragraph in the div, and but there's multiple divs. So I want to say that I want to go to the ID1 on my div that also has an ID.
Sure. So if you're kind of getting into nested IDs or even IDs in classes, you just kind of do it by sequence. So let's just say that I have a div that takes a class of right. Let me do it in the left div here. So I'll have like a div class left div, and inside of the secondary div, I have this paragraph. Here.
And let's say that you have 2 paragraphs too, like paragraph 1 and paragraph 2.
There we go.
And you want it to refer only to the first one. That's it.
Perfect. Great. So one way that we could do it here is that if I want to go ahead and try to refer to a specific p tag, go ahead and refresh this. We'll also notice that the float left attribute applied to the class of .left div is also applied to all its children there. So you'll notice how all these are floating. If I want to go ahead and say, let me, in general, let's try to see if we could do it this way. So we might do something like p.right div. Let's do text or
p.left div for me.
Yes, thank you. See if this guy does it for us.
Does it matter if div? Okay, you put div as caps. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So that's a good point. If I go ahead and I actually do it with a lowercase one, you'll notice it kind of messes up my format because this guy now is not being referenced properly. So again, it's up to you on how you want to make the class names. But in general, you can just make sure that you have the same case styling and everything. Let's see here. And if I go ahead and I try to apply to a specific one, what I could say here is .left div. Let's try dot left div p tag. So what I'm saying now is that I have, and you'll notice my VS Code already says it. It says go ahead and get an element of class of left div, find the p tags of them. Color, let's say brown, something like that. We'll see that all my p tags now inside of this are actually the color brown. But as we said, you only want to figure out the first p tag. So how do I differentiate between these ones?
So you put an ID.
This is where you put the ID, right? Perfect.
Not a class.
So that's the thing here is like, if this is repeated, if for every left div you want the first paragraph to be a bit unique, then you'd want to make it as a class. But if it's an instance like a one-off scenario, you usually want to use an ID because an ID means something in specific. But for instance, if I want to have this functionality, and this is actually helpful for project 2, if I want something on the left and the right side, we could do these floats, and then all my left divs would be in the same class. But now how do I apply to this specific ID? Let's go ahead and say, let's go to left div # paragraph 1.
Okay, because what I thought I was doing right was to type pound sources. I was using an ID.
Okay.
I was using pound. I created a div called an ID. I did it as sources.
Okay.
And then I had a paragraph and I call it 1. Right.
Yeah. So if you could actually,
and then so I ID'd it as just 1. I didn't ID it as par 1 as you did there. So is that a problem with that?
No. So if let me just say 1 down here, as long as you're kind of following the order of how you set it up. So let me replace this with ID1. Let's see what actually happens. Does that give a problem? It's red, but let's just see why it's red. Let me make this guy color.
Because the way I tried to reference to it was to type pound sources and .1, and I think that's not a thing.
Sure. So let's let's see here. So now my when I used 1, it's not really finding it. Let me do paragraph 1. Oh, okay. So what an issue is with the IDs is that if you use a normal, a single number, actually, I didn't know this. It looks like it's going to give you an error. So if you see here, if I'm using the ID as just the number 1, nothing changes. But if I change it to like P1 down here, and I reference it as P1 up here, it's actually working now. I'm changing that color.
It's just with the just numerical alphabet or regular alphabet also?
Let's see here. So if I just call this
A,
we call it A. It looks like it's fine for everything except single letters. Let me try like a full number. Yeah, so it looks like you're not allowed to reference IDs as I didn't know that. As numbers. So you can't just have a numerical ID. So you're going to need to have some type of camel casing or like P1 or something like that. Okay. And the way that you can kind of visualize it too is when you're referencing, because sometimes you might get very embedded with like div inside of a div inside of a div. You want to reference it from the outer element going in. And then you can kind of mix and match. So I could have like dot left div P1 dot text another class inside of here and then another ID, something like that. And as long as you're kind of formatting it properly, you'll see here that this doesn't actually exist, but when I hover over it, through FolkCI, I have these multiple elements with classes and IDs, so you can get very embedded. So all you need to remember is that like you're going from the top level and in, and as long as you're kind of maintaining that consistency, you'll be okay with that.
But why you couldn't just refer to the ID2 directly instead of going left div P1 +1?
That's a good point. So I'm actually doing it. The entire point of IDs really is to avoid having to do that. Just because I like making it harder than it needs to be, I guess. So essentially an ID would just kind of immediately say, jump into here for it. But in the scenario where you might be you would never want to share an ID, but you might be sharing one for some instance in a different div. That's where you would do something like left div P1. But yeah, you're right, Joel. You usually can just refer to the ID right away, and then that avoids having to do this like embedded thing. Okay. Cool. So
can I show you what I was talking about? The mistake
sure.
that I was doing?
Go ahead. Let me stop sharing.
So I can share my beautiful screen. All right, may I share?
Yeah, you should be good to go. Let me.
This guy. Share. Okay. So this is what I have. You see what I did here? Okay. So I think there's a space here, but anyway.
Sure.
So AREF sources, as I said here, have divs and everything.
Sure.
Right. I created many divs. This is project 2, by the way.
Okay, so you're going to the specific, you want to jump to that specific paragraph 1 of your. So what I would say is, why don't you change that ID from 1 to like P1, because again we might not be able to use. And now.
And then on the link, what do I do?
Let's see. So let's do a space and then another £sign in front of the P. So ID of sources and ID of P1. And if that doesn't work, we can just jump directly to P1. So we can ignore the sources. And if we just jump to P1, it will just go right here. Let's try it this way first and see if that works.
If I have the program ready to run the way it is. Okay.
I'll clear that for you.
Let me see. Yeah, I think it's working. It just doesn't show because it's on the very same page.
Oh, sure.
So
but
I can't really see it moving.
But if you minimize it and then you click on that link, if you make it really small, does it jump down for you? If you like make the window small.
Do you want me to share the entire thing? Let me share it.
Let's try it that way.
Screen 1, 2. I have 3 screens right now.
You're really good at coding.
Oh, it was necessary. I'm gonna put this on here. Can you see now?
Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Yeah. So if you can make that super small, like if you drag the screen to be tiny. So at the top left corner. Yeah, almost. You see we had like that draggable arrow? Yeah, make him like super small so that we only see the 1. Let's make him even smaller. There we go. Now let's scroll up to the, scroll that guy all the ways up. Now let's click 1.
Yeah, it's all the way up.
Okay, so it looks like it's still not jumping it down. So let's just make it do the £sign P1. Let's get rid of the £sign sources. There we go. Let's try this guy now. So we could just refresh that page.
And how do I remove the sharing?
Thing? I think if you drag that to the top, it should remove it for you. Mine sometimes gets.
Oh, there we go. It works.
Cool. So let's open up that guy.
I stopped it. Let me run it again. Okay. Yeah. It went.
So essentially solving with the I do see what you're doing there with the jumping with links, but usually you only want to have a single ID that you jump to when you're doing it this way. You might be able to make that work with the classes, but usually if you have a href to other HTML code, you only want to say like the immediate section. So you wouldn't want to say like jump to here and then to here, because it wouldn't really know how to handle that. It would more so only know how to handle jump straight to right here for that.
All right. So how do what if I want to have like many paragraphs and name every single paragraph inside every single div? So what is the best way to do it?
So if you want multiple, so what I would say is you could copy and paste this paragraph into like each of those divs if you want to separate them, or if you want to have multiple ones. But if you want the hrefs to be different, you're going to need to change the IDs of each tag here. So if you have multiple paragraphs, they should have different IDs.
So for example, I could, since it's education, birthright, and sources, I could just say like, on sources is going to be SP1.
Yeah, and then BP1 for birthright, and then EP1 for those ones. So that's all.
Okay, so pretty much I have to name every single. I can't just like have all of them as P1 because I'm thinking of that in case I want to edit and style them. All the first paragraphs in every single folder that I have.
Yes.
You know.
So if you want,
all P1.
Yeah. I would say that, so let's just say you want to style them the same way, but you only want to jump to one. If you want to style all the first paragraphs the same way, I would go before your ID, and then I would make a class that says, like, class is equal to first paragraph, like FP, and all the classes can, all the paragraphs of education, birthright, and sources can share the same class, but you could just change the ID of them to jump to the different ones.
I'm gonna stop sharing so you can show on your screen that I think would be.
Yeah, let's. So if I let's see here, right. So let's just say I have a left div. I have this left div. This guy here. Let me do it right this way. And in your scenario, you had the multiple. You had like one extra one. What I'd say here.
I'm not sharing your screen.
Oh, that would help. Sorry. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so I went ahead and like copied it over, and what I added here is like, so I have my first ID of LP1, and then I have this second ID here of like RP1. So let's just say I'm doing my code that you're doing. A href is equal to # LP1. So this is going to jump. See here. Let me do RP1 for this guy. Jump to right div paragraph 1. So in this scenario, we'll see that I might be able to jump, and you'll see at the top my pound sign is kind of changing. Very small. Okay. So it's kind of redundant because they're on the same side, but they're both, it's jumping me to the first paragraph each time, which is the functionality that you want for your project. But if I want to go ahead and style them the same way, what I could say is, you know what, each paragraph, the first paragraph of each of my divs are going to share the same thing. So what I could say is a class of first paragraph. Now they have different IDs, right? So my link is still going to jump to those specific IDs, but I could share this class between these two guys of first and this is actually a prime example of a difference between IDs and divs. Oops, so that will be dot first paragraph, and let's just say that font size is larger now, large, and then color is like green, something big like that. Now you'll see here that only my first paragraphs, and they still jump to the separate ones at the top, but they're both sharing some type of code. This guy's getting overwritten because I have this piece of code here. Let me change that. Why is he being...
How many classes can I have attached to an element?
Infinite amount. Like you can have an infinite amount. You usually want one ID, but you can have class right div, and let me say first paragraph. I can actually have like right div and left div, and you'll see here that I have already 3 classes applied to the one div there. Okay.
And then when I'm calling it or when I'm referring to it, I could just like dot right div and just have it like that.
Dot right there. And if you want to refer to a specific class, you could do something like this. And the one thing, though, is that when you're creating your classes, this is a good point with HTML, is that the way that it applies to style is sequential. So it's first going to apply right div, then it's going to apply first paragraph, and then it's going to apply left div. So you might encounter code where it's overlapping each other, so you just want to be careful of that. But usually, you could have multiple classes, but IDs you only want one usually, because it's as Joe has said, it's like the scenario where you just want to jump to it right away. Okay.
Cool. All right, my computer was getting stuck, so would you mind sharing this file now that
sure,
you have?
Absolutely, yeah. Let me go ahead and let me make this a bit.
Yeah, we stuck with the same issue.
Sure. Let's see it.
We couldn't get the.
Oh, is the submission still not working for us? Let's see here.
To the right side of the project too. I tried.
Oh, Abdurrahman, sorry, you cut out there. What were you saying?
Thank you.
Sorry, I have very bad connection. I don't know why my internet is not working. I'm losing you a lot. So what I was trying to say, okay. I have the same issue with the project too.
With the
get that right, that text. I tried to copy the class from project, capstone project. They have the class that I got it, but it is not working properly.
Okay, why don't we? I could take a look at that, Abdurrahman, after we go through the rest of this one here in the breakout room.
Yeah, the issue. I'm losing you a lot. My connection. I don't know what's going on with my issue. I don't think it's gonna work.
Okay, don't worry. If you want to,
even I missed the part you explained the burst this, but I'm gonna check that record.
Yeah. I'll have recording. If you text it over, it'll be good as well. Also, I updated the cutoff date for a few of the projects. But if it's not working for you, to submit in Moodle, could you send it over to jlynch@csinow.com?
I did.
Oh, there we go.
I did. I ordered.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll use that there to grade them then. Perfect. Cool. Let's see here. So one more thing I wanted to kind of look at with these, it kind of goes in depth with these, but there's a little bit of the shortcut icon, which is something like a favicon. And a favicon is something that we've seen a ton of times before, but you might not notice it. This W up here, this green W, is what the favicon is. So you could have a little favicon of like your website. It might be like a logo of yours or something that like, Gmail has like the G, stuff like that. YouTube has like the red play button. So that's what favicons are. And the way that you can make them is by using this shortcut icon in the header of your page. So what I could say here is, we'll notice that I just have a basic HTML file at the start. If I go up to my head before my style, and I go ahead and I do something like this, we'll see up here, it looks really bad, but I actually have like a little cake up there now as well. So now I have like a little favicon icon. So this kind of puts your style on your own website, something small. And again, for our purposes with this is the snippet of code that I used, but it's always going to be in the, oops, not that one. Sorry. That was the other one. This code right here, if you're using my example of using that cake image, that's how you get it up there. So if you're asked to like go ahead and put a favicon on, you'll just use that snippet of code, and that's the same for everything, and it's always going to be in the head of your HTML file. Okay.
Does it matter how big of a pixels it has?
Great question. So actually, this is kind of like built in. So it's when you put this icon, rel icon. I guess it still kind of does it. This link void element is kind of built in to say I'm going to size this to be the favicon of the website. So you can put in any image you'd like. You don't need to size it or anything, and it will automatically put it up there.
That's a very quick way to turn it to a very
it's a lot easier.
Quality.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you put the icon in there, so you have to like save the picture as same as the way that you did, right?
Yep.
I mean, when you put the picture in the web page, so you have to like put the picture after the file that you make the web page. So the icon, we have to like save the picture as same as like that too.
Oh, great. So actually, as we were saying here, this image, the cake JPEG that I'm using as my icon, is actually the same size as. Let me go into my body. Let me do source. So it's actually the exact same image as this image right here. So it's the same size, technically. I sized image. Let me delete this. We'll see here that this is the massive cake image that I've been using for a while. But as soon as you put in this snippet of code to your header, it will automatically make it into this style of Favicons. So you don't need to worry about, like, you don't need to do anything where you size it or make it smaller. It automatically puts it up there, and it's the same
Okay.
size as that one there. So it's a really easy
So
way to just get the shortcut.
so you have to save the image at the same folder with them, right?
Oh, great question, right? So if my Favicon image, let me actually do an example. Let's say, let me go into, like, this is another layer. Let me call this Favicon image. It's the same image as the other one, but if I was doing it this way, the exact same concept applies as we were seeing earlier. So I would go to /, this is another layer, and then I would find my Favicon image. This is just an example of me doing it this way, where I have it in a folder. I have this image here. If I refresh it, we'll see that it's up there. And if I actually make a broken link, oh, I guess it's saving it, is it? Usually, it might just put something default, like that default web page that's empty in there for us. But again, because this is the same concept as the other ones, that's where you'll put it there.
Okay, it means href is just the address that picture.
Yep. It's
Okay.
this is another layer, is just the folder where it is. For easiness purposes though, you could just put it in the same folder like that. So
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's
no
pretty clear.
Yeah, cool.
Just so I can memorize, rel stands for
Oh, sorry, what was that?
rel stands for.
Oh, REL is this way of so REL is like relationship, and essentially you have different RELs that can occur, similar to, actually some of them actually go up here as well. I think one was mode. REL just stands for what is the relationship that this element has to your overall document. So there's a few of them. If I do link REL, is it going to tell me them? Let me just double check a few more that we could see. See here. So a few of them that we've already seen is A. Anchor element is the REL. And essentially, it's kind of this unique way for the HTML to work with it. So there's a few different ones. Author is one of them. So you can talk about the author of the web page. Help, sensitive help section. Icon, again, is this icon that we've already seen. What's one that we might have seen as well? No refer. That's something as no opener as well. Let's see here, because we've seen a few of these before. Oh, sorry, that's the biggest one we've seen already. Is style sheet, right? We shouldn't have forgotten that one. What was the other one that we saw? Was the REL is equal to that style sheet there. Oops. So link REL style sheet. Source would be where that's so the href and the source is a bit different there, or href as well. And now I'm going to link where my style sheet is. But REL is the relationship that link has to the document. Yep.
Got it.
Cool. Let me actually toss this in. All right. So that's kind of the basics of the styling. And then I just want to take a look at the iFrame or inline frame. And this creates a browsing context. And this is area within a web page that can display an embedded web document. So essentially, instead of loading an entire web page within an iFrame area, we can store an image in an iFrame area. And we could see here what we kind of mean by iFrame, and this is good for like looking through different forms of slideshows, or if you're presenting images that we're working with, we can kind of use this iframe section here. So what we could actually try to do here is, let's try to make this work with our image. So I'll leave all that up there. This is all okay. We'll see I have a basic image just kind of being plopped down at the bottom. What I could say here instead now is iframe. And let's go ahead and there's one thing that we need to work with when we're using an iframe. And we're going to use this attribute called name. And name is essentially going to be what this iframe is going to be targeted for when we're using this browsing context, or trying to put it into this section of our web page. So let's go ahead and try to call this a name that we can work with. I'll go ahead and reference the name that we used from the web page. And similar to working with images, I can go ahead and set the default width and height to something. So let's do 480. Our height, we could say 320. And now after I do all this, I'm going to put in my source. I'm going to use the cake JPEG source again. And then after all of that, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, did I delete my div? Like so. And now I have ending iframe. Okay. So we'll notice here, it looks a little finicky, but you'll see my iframe is actually this type of context where I can have this section scrolling around it too. Let me actually put this iframe inside of my div. Okay. Oh, it looks like I made it disappear. Let me see here. Let me put one more div down here. Let me put some. Let me do something really quick.
Name is just a name, right?
Oh, sorry.
When you said iframe, put name. That's just the name that you came up. Full size.
Yeah, full size is the name I came up with it. That's just referencing the specific name that we're working with here. So that's just all the name is. It's see here, what the name attribute is going to specify a name for the iframe element, so you can use it as a link later on. So that's all the name is. It's something that you come up with. The main thing with the iframe again is that we can use it to kind of scroll around this section here. Now, if this is too, I think this guy is kind of stuck in the same.
The iframe, it's modifying the image or just creating this box with those dimensions?
So we usually make it to make a box with these scrolling contexts, and another reason why you do the iframe is for something like this shown for it, where you kind of have this image there and you have a thumbnail with it. So you have these thumbnails that are like set on the side, and when you click them, they modify the iframe that's given here. You'll notice that we don't have the scrolling things here because it's we don't have, like, because I messed up my padding, but you'll see here that these are set alone images, like A tags or something, and when you click them, it will go ahead and update the thumbnail there. That's what iframes are usually used for. A lot of like portfolio and websites would use iframes. Okay. And let's see here. You'll see here that from our example, when the code is given to us ahref, we have the one image section, and you'll see that we have this target that is the same name as the class name of the iframe. So let me try to get this working for us here. My divs are all over the place. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So what I'll try to do here is let me go ahead and get some more. I guess I could just go with the cake theme for our like recipe maker website. So let me just get this one. I'll put these in chat for us as well to work with. So this would be 2, then here we go. Oh, thank you. Awesome. I have, oh, is this not going to work? Oh, that works. So I have a different image file, but we could go ahead and, these are 3 different cake images. What I'll do here is I'll toss them into chat for us. If you want to use your own, that's fine. For anything that you see, just the general ideas here for us. And what I could say now is let me go ahead and create some A's over here at the top. And what this A is going to do for us is just going to be a placeholder for these images I just got. So I'll say cake.jpg one more time. And let me make one more. Div over here. And let's see here. Actually, the href. Let me leave the href blank for the time being. I'm going to make this an image. Source is going to be equal to that cake.jpg area. And what I want to do is just kind of make this thumbnail scenario where when I click on the thumbnails, it goes ahead and sets me down to the section down there. And what I could say here with my image, I don't think I could do it with the iframe. I'm going to go ahead and set the style of this image. Let me just try 50 pixels for both of them.
Jonah sent you an images. Go ahead.
Sure. Here.
You can take a look at it.
This guy's jumping down. You know what, folks? What I'll do, just because it's messing with the other one, I'll delete this for the time being and put it in a different file. Sorry, everyone. This is the problem with doing it on the fly.
I really like how fast your computer is.
Yeah. There's a reason for it. Bit of money on this guy. So let's see here. Copy it. There we go. So I'll just toss them in here for the time being. There we go. Okay. So I have a pretty basic this like thumbnail up there with this guy. What I'll try to do here is I'm going to do this a few more times with each of my different images. So I think my cake tree was a JPEG, and this one here is actually a JFIF, which we didn't actually cover, but it's a different format of an image. And we'll see that we have all 3 of these here pretty easily. Let me put the margin at the top to just be 40. So now I have a pretty decent iframe, and what I'll do is I'll actually try to make the width a bit larger. Okay, so now I can scroll down and change this guy around. And what I want to do is essentially with this iframe is like, how do I click on these guys to update this target? So what I could say here in my images is that my href that I'm going to be working with, see here. Oops. I'm going to try to reference the name of this guy inside of my href. So the reference, the reference I'm talking about here is this name attribute called full size. We call the full size here based on the PowerPoint. You can call this whatever you'd like. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say in my let's try the first one here, or let's try the third one here, href, and I'm going to go ahead and try to get to the portrait of this guy. Let's just try to put the same name as before. And what I'm going to say is the target that I'm going to have, this says specifies where to display the linked URL. It is a name of or keyword of a browsing context or iframe. Okay, so this is essentially kind of built in for our iframe. And I'm going to try to put this to full size here. Okay. And we'll see now, this looks horrible. I'm sorry, everyone, but essentially, we'll see that when I click on it, it actually updates my iframe, and you'll see it actually, you'll notice, let me refresh it. My width is changing in my iframe because it's taking the size of the image. But when I click this guy, my width isn't that much larger, so my iframe is only scrolling up and down, okay? So my iframe will always maintain the context that it's given, a width of 600 pixels and a height of 320, but it won't like go past that essentially. So essentially, if I have a bigger image, it's just going to give me the ability to scroll through it, okay? This is essentially what an iframe is, and you can do this with text. So with text, some of us might have seen websites where you can scroll down in a section to read through it. Exact same thing, you just replace the image down here with a piece of text. Let's actually try that out here.
All right, but like how, if you click on every single image, every single image is going to pop up?
So we don't have that ability yet, and why don't we have that ability yet here? It's because my A guy isn't actually showing. So essentially, we could think of it this way. These A's are your thumbnails. That's what the A's are. And what happens when I click the thumbnail, it runs what's inside of here. That's all that's happening. So let's actually try this with...
So you can't really come back to the picture.
So yeah, let's try to make it happen where we can come back to it though. So what I can try to do here is for my second one, let's do a href. And inside of here, this href portion is going to be telling us where to get the image for the thumbnail. We can usually just call it, seems like it's the same each time, but I'm going to call it this guy here. And again, with the href, the most important part is trying to target the specific full-size image that we have.
Because that's the name that we gave to the iframe.
Yep. So if I went down here, we call it like a full display frame. We'll notice that, We'll notice that what's happening now is that it's just tossing me into a new link here because I'm getting this href, and essentially when I click on the A of the href, it's going to take me there. But if I change my target here to the name that I have down there, full display frame, we'll see that's working. I have a little weird sign there too, but again, this is how I'm changing it. Okay. So this name is going to tell us what to target. Now, what's this target keyword again? Well, do we remember what we used to do with target? What happens if I click target here? I get taken to the new tab, right? So instead of being taken to a new tab, I'm just going to target my iframe. That's all that target's doing. So it's simply another way of kind of showing you another area of where to go, jumping to it. Now, how do I get back to my original guy here? Well, we could just go ahead and implement this the same way we were doing the other ones. Now, the way I'm coding this is very similar to the book. I'm using the same image twice, though. The PowerPoint uses two different ones. You might actually be able to remove a bit of this code to get it to work on your end as well. You might not need all of this. But we'll see here now that I'm able to tab between these guys, and it seems to be giving me back to the original one. Okay, and now the iframe maintains this context. You'll see that this image is small enough to fit into it, so I don't do anything. This guy's able to scroll, and for the second one, oops. Oh, it looks like it's not gonna mess me up there. We might need to do a bit more to display the text before showing it there. But again, you could use, this is good for the images for the most part, and we can look at the text later for us, okay? So I'll let me do here. Do multiple divs, and for this media practice one, I'll call this one the thumbnail example. So I'll toss that into chat for us. Okay. And again, this is just kind of using media thumbnails with this guy here. So again, a bit more complicated than what we're used to. Just kind of a few inner working parts. But again, the target is something we've seen before. And this iframe is just going to be where we target it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions with the images there? Feeling?
Right now, no, I don't think so.
Okay, good, awesome. That's good. So again, with the iframes are pretty useful with the thumbnails. The next part here is this audio, and because we're on Zoom, and I don't know how effective this is going to be, I just wanted to showcase it.
So I do have a question actually.
Sure.
If to put them on the same line and make sure they stay on the same line, okay, the same row, different elements, the box,
like these guys,
or whatever box that I'm creating, right?
Yeah.
And I'm again thinking of project 2 because I know I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
That little box on the right.
Yeah.
And knowing that, how do I do that again? I can just put those two things, call it 2 divs, and make sure that they don't touch each other, and I separate them by size.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm getting confused.
Sure. So, actually, the remainder of these guys here, the next few portions here for our PowerPoint is about background images and audio, and video as well. What I'll do for us with this lecture, because I think those are pretty straightforward. We'll cover them a bit later on. If folks want more practice with the divs, because I know Project 2 is due tonight, I can shift to focus on that for the remainder of this lecture. So let me do something for us here. So I can cover the video and background stuff.
Because I don't interfere on your...
Oh, you're fine. No worries. This is actually better because I want to make sure everyone can get through Project 2 as well. So I'll show us an example of this one here. Let's see here.